Did you know that there was an NBA player who only used his left hand? A player who did something everyone expected but no one could stop. Well, that player was Manu Ginobili, and he dominated the NBA by becoming a two-time NBA All-Star and winning 4 championships throughout his legendary career. But why did he refuse to use his right hand? And how did he still find success with his strange scoring philosophy?
I wanted to go left. If I couldn't go left, then I would make some sort of move to go back left.
To find out, let's go back to 1977 in Bahia Blanca, Argentina, where Emmanuel David Ginobili was born into an incredibly fortunate situation because his father Jorge was a basketball coach, in addition to being the president of their local recreation center. It was at this rec center where Manu and his 2 older brothers would develop their love for basketball, battling against anyone and everyone who stepped foot onto their court. However, due to Manu being the youngest and shortest, he would develop a very unique skill set in order to stay on the court playing the sport he loved. Whenever they could, the Ginobili family would sit down and watch the Chicago Bulls, locked in on their superstar player, Michael Jordan. While many watched in awe as Jordan flew through the air, Ginobili would focus on something completely different: Michael's insane competitive spirit. Manu would sit and dream about one day competing in the NBA, but being from a small town in Argentina, Ginobili thought it would never be possible. Instead, he aimed to become a professional player in Argentina, just like his 2 older brothers. As Manu grew into a young adult, his quirky playstyle and insane competitive drive would see him achieve his dream a whole lot earlier than many expected, because at just 16 years old, Ginobili signed to Andino Sports Club, a professional team that played in the Argentinian National League. However, he would only play a single season for Andino before they traded him to his hometown team, Estudiantes de Bahia Blanca, in 1996. Ginobili would continue to play for Bahia Blanca between 1996 and 1998, and his incredibly flashy style of play at such a young age caught the eyes of the Argentinian junior national team, who selected him to represent his country at the Under-22 World Cup in 1998. Manu, alongside his new teammates, would head down to Australia, where Ginobili would showcase his dominant all-around scoring game. He could shoot from range, dunk on people, as well as finish and attack exceptionally well with his dominant left hand. It was this incredible play at the Under-22 Championships that had the 21-year-old Manu selected to represent the Argentinian senior men's national team at the 1999 America's Cup. This selection gave Manu a huge confidence boost, and Ginobili, still holding on to his lifelong dream of playing in the NBA, decided to throw his name into the 1999 NBA draft. Because why not? 26th of June, 1999, the San Antonio Spurs have just defeated the New York Knicks, led by the general David Robinson and the 1997 number 1 draft pick Tim Duncan, crowning them as NBA champions. Shortly after their championship run, R.C. Buford, San Antonio's general manager, alongside their head coach, Gregg Popovich, would sit down to discuss who they should select with their 29th and 57th picks. Given that they had just won a title, their goal was to trade these picks to acquire win-now talent. The pair would easily trade away the 29th pick, but not a single team in the NBA had any interest in the second to last pick. So, R.C. and Pop had a problem. What are we supposed to do with this pick? Who should we even draft? They would look down at their notes of international prospects, and one name stood out because R.C. Buford had also been in Australia watching the Under-22 World Cup, and Gregg Popovich remembered seeing a certain name on the Argentinian national team roster. So,
with the 57th selection in the 1999 NBA draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Emmanuel Ginobili from Argentina.
Despite being shockingly drafted into the NBA, Ginobili opted to remain in Europe to continue developing his game because he believed he wasn't ready to perform at an NBA level. Instead, Manu would get an opportunity to play at the second highest level of the game because Ettore Messina, the head coach of Euroleague team Virtus Bologna, had been scouting Manu ever since he became a professional player at 16. So, Messina would offer the now 22-year-old a contract to be the first player off the bench, which he gladly accepted. Sasha Danilovic, a European basketball legend, was the starting shooting guard for Virtus and the player Manu was brought in to back up. However, just before the season began, he suddenly retired. This shocking exit meant Manu was now a full-time starter, a role he flourished in, averaging 15.2 points and an insane 2.9 steals per game. Virtus, led by Ginobili's incredible play, would not only win back-to-back Italian National League championships in 2001 and 2002, but win a EuroLeague title in 2001. It was during this championship series that Manu would showcase just how dominant he truly was, being named as the most valuable player. RC, alongside Popovich, had kept a close eye on Manu and were realizing that maybe he wouldn't be a project, instead someone who could get them back to their championship winning ways. So they offered him a 2-year contract to begin in the 2002-2003 season, and after winning a EuroLeague title, Ginobili felt confident enough to play at an NBA level. However, this international success meant very little to the current players within the Spurs. Their current star, Tim Duncan, said this when asked about Manu.
Supposedly he's a great find. He's the best player in Europe, supposedly.
Bruce Bowen, one of the NBA's best defenders, would also question Ginobili's ability to play at an NBA level. Bowen would test Manu throughout their practices, applying the same defensive pressure he would use against players like Kobe Bryant, and Ginobili would rise to the occasion. His competitive spirit and quirky style of play, something the Americans weren't used to guarding, would earn Manu the respect of his teammates and head coach Gregg Popovich. The Spurs would face off against the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers on the 29th of October 2002. It was this game where Manu would finally begin his NBA career, and he did so in spectacular fashion. His first ever NBA shot attempt was a 3, which he splashed, making it clear Manu had arrived, and he was ready to compete for an NBA championship. Over the course of the season, Ginobili would prove himself as a legitimate rotation player, but something was very different about the way he played, especially compared to his American counterparts.
Man, Manu was weird. He has a lot of moves, but instincts that you can't teach.
Manu's awkward playstyle that was comprised of funky left-hand finishes, step-backs, and athletic drives would cause some tension between the fundamentally focused Coach Pop and himself, with Ginobili sharing,
"Every time I did something wrong, I look at him and say, him shaking his head and that, so I was trying to figure out what he wanted and what he did."
Regardless of Pop's initial criticisms, the Spurs would grab a league-leading 60 wins to end their regular season and were set to face the Phoenix Suns in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Ginobili would come off the bench and provide a vital scoring punch for the Spurs, averaging 7.6 points, which helped them eliminate Phoenix in 6 games. But it wasn't this series where Ginobili proved his worth. They were set to face the defending champion Lakers in the second round. Manu would score 15 points and 17 points in the first 2 games of the series, leading the Spurs to a 2-0 lead. This sudden rise in play caught the eye of a certain Black Mamba.
I remember Kobe Bryant saying to me when Manu came in to the game, like, "Bruce, who's that white boy?" I said, "Oh, he ain't no white boy. He Argentinian."
Ginobili was beginning to gain respect from not only his teammates, but the whole NBA, as the Spurs easily dealt with the Lakers, dominating them in Game 6, ending the series with a 28-point win. San Antonio's cross-state rival, the Dallas Mavericks, were the Spurs' final challenge in their quest to winning an NBA championship. The 25-year-old rookie would again shine throughout the series, but none more than Game 4. Manu had a huge breakout game, scoring 21 points while shooting 66% from the field, leading the Spurs to victory. And just a few days later, they would eliminate the Mavericks in Game 6, booking their tickets to face the New Jersey Nets in the NBA Finals. Manu's eccentric playstyle was gaining him more and more fans with each passing game, including a certain former NBA player who would go crazy when watching Ginobili play.
Points and
what
11
was I
rebounds.
screaming in the green room tonight, Kenny? And you made fun of me last week.
I'm hungry.
Ginobili! Manu Ginobili! 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 Oh my God! Ginobili!
And thanks to Manu's style of play, Gregg Popovich was changing the way he viewed basketball. Pop would often yell at Ginobili for the wild moves he would pull off,
Manu!
only to be met with a simple response.
He goes, Manu, this is what I do. And from that day on, we pretty much let him do what he does. So he taught me to be a little bit more patient, to widen my horizons, think out of the box a little bit more.
Armed with the trust of their head coach, Manu would play incredibly throughout the NBA Finals, scoring 12 points in Game 5 and a crucial 11 points in Game 6. Ginobili's play made it clear that he was the piece San Antonio was missing, and the Spurs were crowned champions once again after their victory in Game 6. Ginobili had gone from a wildcard 57th pick to an NBA champion in just his first season in the league, and things were only getting better for Ginobili, because to end the 2003-2004 season, San Antonio, fueled by failing to win back-to-back championships in 2000, grabbed the second best record. Their hard work was rewarded with a first-round matchup against a very young but hungry Memphis Grizzlies. However, the defending champions were just too much for the Grizzlies, sweeping them with ease in just 4 games. This commanding performance resulted in a second-round matchup with the Los Angeles Lakers, who were retooled, reset, and ready for revenge. Throughout the first 2 games, everything seemed to go well for Manu, with the Spurs grabbing an early 2-0 lead. San Antonio would head to LA with extreme confidence until something mind-blowing would happen. Manu would score 17 points in Game 3 and 21 points in Game 4, but this wasn't enough to spur San Antonio to victory. I had to do it once, I'm sorry. With the Lakers tying the series at 2 games each. In Game 5, with 29 seconds remaining, the Spurs held a 1-point lead, just a couple of possessions away from swinging the series back in their favor. But Kobe would be Kobe. The Spurs called a timeout, allowing Coach Pop to draw up a game-winning out-of-bounds play, which all started with
Ginobili will inbound. To Duncan. He gets doubled. Shaq all over him. He gets away, a fadeaway. He makes it with 4:10 left. Unbelievable.
San Antonio was about to do the impossible, grab a 3-2 lead, head to Los Angeles, and essentially end the Lakers dynasty, until this happened.
They get it to Fisher. He scores! Derek Fisher scores at the...
Game 6 was the final chance for Manu to will his team to victory, and he did just that. Ginobili would showcase his signature left-handed drives for easy finishes, right-hand drives into beautiful pull-ups, and showcasing a new move, not yet seen in the NBA, stepping one way and then the other way to maneuver around the much larger Shaq. But Manu's 16 points just wasn't enough to beat the Lakers, who would win Game 6 and eliminate the Spurs, crushing their hopes of winning back-to-back NBA titles. Ginobili was heartbroken, but didn't hang his head for too long, because he wanted to show the world that he was more than an off-the-bench scorer, and in fact, was one of the best shooting guards on earth. Shortly after their crushing loss to the Lakers, Manu was selected to play for Argentina's national team once again, this time at the 2004 Olympics. This selection provided Ginobili a stage to prove to the world that he was ready for a much larger role in San Antonio. But would he be able to dominate against stacked teams like the United States? However, Argentina might not even get a chance to play against the US, because after a shock loss to Spain as well as Italy, they were down 1 point with no timeouts against Serbia, and things were not looking good for Manu. But once again, Ginobili would demonstrate his very unique playstyle, hitting this insane bank fading jumper to win against Serbia, propelling them into a semi-finals matchup against the United States. The US, after winning gold in 1992, 1996, and 2000, were hungry to win a 4th gold medal in a row, and many felt like they were the heavy favorite. But Manu would shock the world once again, scoring an insane 29 points against the United States, eliminating them from gold medal contention. But their finals opponent had already beaten them in pool play, so once again, Manu and his team entered the game as the underdog. Despite this, Argentina was motivated to get revenge against Italy, and Ginobili would again lead Argentina throughout the game, scoring 16 points in what was at the time the most crucial game of his career. Manu's incredible performance would lead Argentina to their first ever basketball medal at the Olympics, and what a medal to start with. The cherry on top was that Manu had proved to the world he wasn't just an off-the-bench scorer, instead a world-class bucket getter, someone capable of leading a team to incredible heights. And the even crazier thing is, he was doing all of this only scoring with his left hand. Entering the 2004 2004-2005 season, San Antonio offered Manu a new contract, $52 million over 6 years, which he gladly accepted. Fueled by his gold medal winning performance and driven to get revenge for their 2004 playoff blunder, Manu would have an incredible season. On the 21st of January, Ginobili would have the performance of his lifetime, scoring a career high 48 points. It was because of this play that Coach Pop would finally change his mind, elevating Manu into the starting lineup for the rest of the season. His new starting role allowed him to average 16 points per game, and for the first time in Ginobili's career, he was named as an All-Star for the 2005 All-Star Game. This nomination was a clear sign that not only had Manu made the NBA, but he was becoming one of the best shooting guards in the league. San Antonio would end their regular season as the second seed and was set to face the Denver Nuggets, who were led by their rising star, Carmelo Anthony. The majority of fans and media personalities around the NBA just assumed it would be an easy sweep and the Spurs would move on to the second round without breaking a sweat. But this was far from the truth, as Denver would stun the Spurs in Game 1, winning by 6 points. This shock loss caused head coach Gregg Popovich to make a drastic change to ensure their season wouldn't tragically end in the first round against Denver. So, Coach Pop would choose to start Brent Barry and move Ginobili back to the bench, the same role he played during their last championship run. Whilst most people all around the world would resent their coach for taking away a starting role that they had worked so hard for, Manu was different. He approached the situation with extreme humility, understanding exactly where Coach Pop was coming from, and it was their incredible relationship that allowed for this understanding.
I became way better player because of having a coach like that made me understand how a team worked, but also outside the court. He started to become like a father figure. He became way more than a coach-player relationship.
The incredible thing is, Popovich's move was genius because Ginobili would thrive in his new off-the-bench go-get-buckets role, dropping 32 points in Game 3, assisting the Spurs to a gentleman's sweep of the Nuggets, winning the series 4-1.
Ginobili only know how to play one way, and that's hard. I mean, he's fearless. I'm kind of liking Manu, you know?
Manu would remain coming off the bench during their second round series against the Seattle Supersonics. But after the Sonics won Game 4, the Spurs were not in the position they thought they would be. With the series tied at 2 wins each, Coach Pop knew something had to change. So Game 5 saw Manu inserted back into the starting lineup. And with the Spurs championship hopes on the line, he knew he had to perform. Ginobili would score 39 points with a variety of hanging left-handed floater fadeaways. What even is this? Wow. Transition step-through dunks and gliding lefty finger rolls, leading the Spurs to a 3-2 lead heading into the must-win Game 6 in Seattle. Throughout Game 6, San Antonio was far from dominant, and with 14.4 seconds remaining, the score was tied at 96. Pop would place the Spurs' championship hopes into Ginobili's hands, and Manu would drain the clock before attacking to, you guessed it, his left hand, finding Tim Duncan underneath the basket for a wide open layup, giving them a 2-point lead with 0.5 seconds remaining. But the Spurs knew all too well what a team can do with limited time on the clock in game-winning situations, and this time, Ray Allen would get wide open in the corner for a potentially game-winning 3.
Allen comes free, puts up a 3. Oh, it just misses.
And the Spurs would move on to the Western Conference Finals, where they would meet the Phoenix Suns. After Manu's incredible Game 5 and Game 6 performance against the Sonics, Coach Pop would place Ginobili back into the starting lineup full time, and it only took the Spurs 5 games to defeat the Suns. However, what would come next would be their toughest matchup yet, the defending champion Detroit Pistons. Many questions were raised by fans and the media. Would the Spurs be able to outscore the incredibly defensive-focused Detroit, or would the Pistons shut them down? Manu would score 26 points in Game 1 and 27 in Game 2, leading the Spurs to hold a commanding 2-0 lead heading back to Detroit for Game 3. However, this is where things started to go horribly wrong for the Spurs, because Manu would struggle, only scoring 7 points. and Detroit would demolish San Antonio in Game 4, winning by a mind-blowing 31 points, tying the series at 2 games each. Manu knew that if he didn't have an incredible offensive performance in Game 5 and Game 6, their championship dreams would be destroyed by the Pistons. While Manu would only score 15 points in Game 5, he would impact the game in another way by using the focus of Detroit's defense against them. Ginobili would throw dime after dime to his teammates, finishing the game with 9 assists. However, it was his final assist that would be the most crucial. Also, side note, I know this video is about scoring, but Manu is a very underrated passer. Like, very underrated. Anyway, back to the video. Down 2 with 9.4 seconds left, the Spurs had drawn up a game-winning out-of-bounds play. Tim Duncan would screen to get Manu a wide-open corner 3, but Detroit immediately countered with a double team to try and force a turnover. Ginobili, understanding of the situation and the importance of trusting your team, immediately passed the ball to one of the best late clock shot makers in the world, Robert Big Shot Bob Horry. But the battle wasn't over. The Pistons still had 5.4 seconds remaining to take the lead and give themselves a 3-2 lead over San Antonio. However, Tony Parker, another international player from France, would perform an incredible defensive job on Rip Hamilton. Parker forced him into a very tough fading jump shot, which he missed, and crucially, Manu tipped the ball away from the Pistons' big men attempting to put it back, which Bruce Bowen would pick up and dribble out the clock. The Spurs were just 1 win away from winning an NBA title, and with the last 2 games to be played in their home arena, the whole team felt confident that they would win their second championship in just 3 years. But the defending champions had other plans. Despite Manu again taking on a heavy scoring load, dropping 21 points in Game 6, Detroit, fueled by wanting to do what very few NBA teams had ever achieved in going back-to-back as NBA champions, won by 9 points. The stage was now set, the final game of the season between the 2 best teams. Whoever wins leaves as NBA champions. PJ Carlesimo, an assistant coach with the Spurs, was interviewed about Manu Ginobili's play before Game 7 and had this to say.
Manu is an incredibly special player. He's a warrior. He's going to play better in the fourth quarter. He's going to play better in the last 3 minutes of a game. I think people realize now just how special he is. Manu
would score 23 points in Game 7, including this huge 3 late in the fourth quarter.
Puts it on the floor, lays it off to Ginobili. The 2 on the clock.
As well as the clutch free throws to ensure Detroit had no chance of coming back, and the Spurs were crowned NBA champions. In the span of just 5 years, Manu Ginobili had achieved something impossible, winning a Euroleague championship, Euroleague Finals MVP, NBA championship, Olympic gold medal, and then shockingly, another NBA championship. The even crazier thing was, he was doing so really only scoring with his left hand. Ginobili and the Spurs continued their success into the 2005-2006 season, with Manu averaging 15.1 points, and he was starting to change how guards would score against taller players with his very unique moves. Ginobili would often step to one side of a big to get them to move in that direction, before stepping the opposite way to find a sneaky opening for a left-handed finish near the rim, which would be dubbed the Eurostep. The Eurostep is now an incredibly popular move, used by almost all NBA players, but originates from Europeans like Manu. The crazy thing is, Ginobili didn't even realize he was doing anything weird or unique.
Even the Eurostep, I didn't know I was doing anything unusual. I was using the only tool I had to go by guys like that were 50 to 60 pounds heavier and taller and could jump more than me. And for me, it was so natural and so automatic.
With the Spurs again grabbing the league's best record throughout the regular season, the stage was set for them to finally repeat as NBA champions. Manu would have an incredible performance in Game 2 of their first round series against the Sacramento Kings, dropping 32 points. While the Kings would win 2 games, the Spurs eventually defeated them in 6 and moved on to the second round against the Dallas Mavericks, a series that would change Manu Ginobili's career for the worst. Dallas Dallas, led by their German superstar Dirk Nowitzki, were a formidable opponent, taking the Spurs all the way to Game 7. However, with 32 seconds remaining, the Spurs held a 3-point lead, and it looked likely they would be the team to move on and face the Phoenix Suns. Dallas ran a nice sideline out of bounds play to get their European superstar the ball. Despite Nowitzki getting decent position inside the 3-point line, the Spurs crucially held a 3-point lead. Therefore, even if Dirk scored a layup, San Antonio would still be up 1. Ginobili saw that Bowen was slightly beat. Therefore, he ran over to provide help, only to foul Nowitzki as he was going up. Ginobili had done the worst possible thing, fouling Dirk, who made the basket and was heading to the free throw line, where he tied the game at 104. But we all make mistakes, and it was still the Spurs ball with 21.6 seconds remaining. Given that the shot clock was off, if Manu timed it right, he could win the game for the Spurs, and his mistake in their last possession would be completely forgotten. Just like Game 6 against the Supersonics in their previous championship run, Coach Pop put the ball back in Ginobili's hands for the most important possession of their 2006 season. Manu would run the clock down before, yes, you guessed it again, attacking to his left hand. But this time, he failed, missing the game-winning shot, and they would head to overtime. Throughout overtime, the Mavericks would dismantle the Spurs, winning 118 to 111, ending San Antonio's dreams of repeating as NBA champions. Manu was devastated.
We were all hurt. The faces were really sad, and it was hard to talk to each other because how upset we felt.
As the 2006-2007 season began, the Spurs headed to Paris for their training camp, focused on avoiding making the same mistakes again, with Coach Pop commenting,
"Listening is important. Then maybe we don't foul Nowitzki the last play of the game. We have another ring."
And a huge change was on the horizon for Manu Ginobili's career. During the regular season, San Antonio would get off to a rough start, and Coach Pop knew something would have to change in order for the Spurs to have another chance at winning an NBA championship. Therefore, he sat down with Manu and informed him of his new plan to help the Spurs get back to a championship level. Pop told Ginobili that he would be permanently coming off the bench, and this decision shocked Manu.
At the beginning, it was kind of hard. It took me a while to understand it.
Because he had worked so hard throughout his career to earn a starting spot. But over time, he came to understand Popovich's thinking.
Once you get that, ego thing out of the middle, I kind of understood that was my role, that it was going to be better for the team, and I always loved it.
Despite his initial frustrations, Manu would grow to love his off-the-bench role.
So I get to see what was going on more.
And Ginobili would finish the season averaging 16.5 points per game. His dominant regular season included a 40-point performance against Atlanta, as well as 4 30-point games throughout the regular season. These performances would earn the Spurs a first-round playoff matchup against a familiar opponent, the Denver Nuggets. But in similar fashion to their previous matchup with Denver, San Antonio easily disposed of the Nuggets, and they would head into a second-round matchup against the Phoenix Suns, which all came down to a pivotal Game 6, because Phoenix knew if they won, they would head back to Arizona for Game 7, and with the energy their home crowd provided, that they would be the team moving on to the Western Conference Finals. Knowing the importance of winning this game, Ginobili would have an incredible performance off the bench, scoring 33 points, grabbing 11 rebounds, and getting 6 assists. Manu's dominant play helped the Spurs end the series that game, and they were now set to face the Utah Jazz in the conference finals, a series in which Ginobili would dominate, averaging 17.6 points in their powerful 4-1 series victory. This meant the Spurs were set to make their third NBA Finals appearance in 5 years. However, while their road to the finals was a lot easier than previous seasons, San Antonio was set to face a new opponent, one they hadn't met yet, the proclaimed chosen one, LeBron James. LeBron was making his NBA Finals debut with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and his path to the finals was a destructive one. James dismantled the Detroit Pistons defense in their Eastern Conference Finals matchup, scoring 48 points in Game 5. And the even crazier thing is, 25 of those points were in a row. But LeBron was only 22 years old, compared to the Spurs, who had been championship contenders ever since LeBron entered the league in 2003. This championship experience was just too much for the rookie Cavaliers, because Manu, alongside his Spurs teammates, would incredibly sweep James and the Cavaliers in the 2007 NBA Finals. Ginobili had won his third NBA title, the Spurs' fourth since 1999. You might think that winning 3 NBA titles in just 5 seasons was already an incredible resume, but wait until you find out what happened in the 2007-2008 season, because Manu was really beginning to flourish in his off-the-bench role, averaging an incredible 19.5 points per game. His nearly 20-point average was made up of 11 30 or more point games and 2 40 or more point games throughout the regular season. These improvements saw Manu finally gain some recognition from the NBA, winning 6th Man of the Year, as well as being named to the All-NBA third team, setting the stage for Ginobili to achieve something he had never done before. San Antonio easily maneuvered their way to the Western Conference Finals and were set to face the Kobe-led Los Angeles Lakers. Manu, alongside his teammates, still hurt by their shocking 2004 playoff series loss against the Lakers, were ready to get revenge. However, things would take a dark turn during their first 2 games of the series, with Manu only scoring a combined 17 points in Game 1 and Game 2. San Antonio would head back to Texas, knowing that they had to win both home games in order to have a chance at achieving their back-to-back championship dreams. And Manu knew if he didn't perform in Game 3, he would feel the same pain he felt in 2004 and 2006. Kobe and Manu would have one of the most epic shooting guard battles in the history of basketball. The pair would trade punch after punch, both scoring 30 points throughout the must-win Game 3. However, the Spurs would finish the game victorious, downing the Lakers by a mind-blowing 19 points, keeping their championship hopes alive. But this is where things started to go downhill for not only the Spurs and Manu, but Ginobili's whole career, because during Game 4 and 5, he would only score 16 points. This horrific performance, when San Antonio needed him most, would result in them being eliminated by the Los Angeles Lakers. And not only that, this may have been the Spurs' final chance at winning back-to-back NBA titles, because Manu, due to injuries, would struggle throughout the 2008-2009 season, which would also prevent him from playing in the 2009 playoffs. And in the following season, something crazy would happen. Phoenix, who had been at the mercy of Manu and the Spurs ever since he entered the league in 2002, would finally get their revenge, sweeping them in the second round of the NBA playoffs in the 2009-2010 season. However, do you remember what George Gervin said earlier in the video?
Ginobili only know how to play one way, and that's hard. I mean, he's fearless.
Manu was one of the toughest, most competitive players on the whole planet. And if you think back to the start of his story, it's really no surprise why. Because his idol was the most competitive, toughest basketball player in history. Ginobili would turn everything around in the 2010-2011 season, averaging 17.4 points, and would once again be named as an All-Star, as well as being appointed to the All-NBA third team. The even crazier thing is, NBA media personalities were actually arguing for Manu to be an MVP candidate, saying that he was the best player on the league's best team, therefore he should win. However, Manu would suffer an injury right before the Spurs' first-round matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies, forcing him to miss Game 1, and Manu's absence would result in a Spurs loss. This is when something shocking would happen, because despite suffering a broken right elbow, Manu didn't want to let his team down. So he had his elbow taped, strapped, and kept together with a compression sleeve so he could be out there fighting, and fight he did. Manu would drop an insane 33 points in Game 5 of the series, which at this stage in his career seemed so normal for him. But I want you to imagine just how difficult it would be for you to score 30 points only using your dominant hand. But for Ginobili, someone who really only wanted to go left anyway, had no issue playing with a broken right elbow, and San Antonio would win Game 5, just 2 wins away from moving on to the next round. However, Memphis was too much for the aging Spurs, because the Grizzlies would place the final nail in Manu's coffin during Game 6, winning by 8 points. This loss ended the Spurs' championship dreams once again, and something very unusual would happen over the offseason.
At 12:01 Friday morning, the NBA locked out its players after failing to reach a new collective bargaining agreement.
It took months and months for new terms to be agreed upon, causing the Spurs to have their season opener on Boxing Day compared to the usual Halloween start. This lockout, which was frustrating for most NBA players, was actually really beneficial for the Spurs, and specifically Manu. And once again, history was repeating itself, because RC Buford performed a draft day miracle, trading their beloved veteran point guard George Hill to the Indiana Pacers in exchange for their 15th pick, Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi would prove to be an incredible pickup for San Antonio, because just like Manu, Leonard provided instant impact for the Spurs, helping them grab the league's best record heading into the playoffs. Rejuvenated from their longer break, the Spurs would again make it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, where they would face the Oklahoma City Thunder. Ginobili would have incredible performances in Game 1 and Game 2, scoring 46 points combined in both games, leading San Antonio to a 2-0 series lead. At this stage, many felt like the Spurs would beat Oklahoma with ease, as OKC's core was incredibly young and inexperienced. But this was far from the truth. The Thunder would shut Manu down in Games 3 and 4, only allowing him to score a combined 21 points, tying the series at 2 games each. Once again, like many times in Ginobili's successful NBA career, Coach Pop needed him to be a world-class scorer, because Popovich sensed a shift in the series. So he opted to start Manu for the first time since the 2007 season. But would Manu, at 34 years old, be up to the task and save San Antonio's season? Ginobili would go out and score a point for every year he had lived on Earth. But this would not be enough to save the Spurs, who would lose both Game 5 and Game 6. San Antonio had once again failed to make it to the NBA Finals. The Spurs were at a crossroad heading into the 2012-2013 season, as their core were all nearing the end of their careers. Many questioned why they kept the core together at this stage, but everyone in the Spurs organization knew something incredible was about to happen, because the Spurs had done the impossible. Led by their young rising star, Kawhi Leonard, made it all the way back to the NBA Finals for the first time in 5 seasons. San Antonio was set to face the defending champions, the Miami Heat, led by LeBron James in the 2012-2013 NBA Finals. Manu's play throughout the series was much like his regular season, filled with many ups and many downs. You see, Manu had been a professional basketball player for nearly 20 years at this point, and it was this load on his body that impacted Ginobili's performance when it mattered most. Ginobili would shoot a horrific 36% from the field and average 2.3 turnovers a game in the first 4 games of the NBA Finals. However, despite Manu's blunders, the series was tied at 2 games each, and they headed back to San Antonio for a must-win Game 5. Manu knew that he had to step up, otherwise this might be his last chance to win an NBA title, and step up he did. At 35 years old, just 42 days away from his 36th birthday, Manu would drop 24 points in Game 5, as well as an insane 10 assists, leading the Spurs to victory against Miami. When asked after the game about Ginobili's play, Coach Pop had this to say.
I went from trading him on the spot to wanting to cook him breakfast tomorrow. And when I talked to him and say, Manu, he goes, this is what I do. That's what he's going to tell me.
The finals moved back to Miami for Game 6, and something had clearly shifted in the series, because with 29 seconds remaining, Miami Heat fans started to leave the arena. They were doing this as the Spurs held a commanding 5-point lead, and many just assumed the game was over. The shocking thing was, it wasn't just fans. NBA officials also assumed San Antonio had won.
Someone gets yellow rope, bumps me, I turn around, they're pulling the yellow rope to rope everyone off. And then I noticed the Larry O'Brien trophy being wheeled out. We have it in our fingertips, an NBA championship.
However, just a minute before the sideline out of bounds play, Manu had crucially missed one of his 2 free throws, meaning the Spurs were only up 5 instead of 6. But just like his silly foul in Game 7 against Dallas in 2006, if the Spurs won, then no one would even remember this. But thanks to an offensive rebound, LeBron would hit an incredibly clutch 3, cutting the Spurs lead to 2 points. Yet, San Antonio just had to have one final solid possession. Assuming Miami would foul, all they needed to do was hit both free throws and the game would be theirs. Unfortunately, just like Manu, Kawhi would only make a single free throw, allowing Miami to dribble the ball up the court, and the rest is history.
Should the Spurs foul? Should Miami go for the 3 right away? Just attack the basket. James catches, puts up the 3. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His 3-pointer. Bang! Tie!
San Antonio's worst nightmare had happened. Ray Allen's 3 sent what was almost a guaranteed win into overtime, giving the Heat a chance to tie the series at 3 games each. Throughout overtime, the score would remain locked. However, with 55.4 seconds remaining and down 1, something tragic would happen. Ginobili looked to attack the basket, unsurprisingly to his left, but he couldn't find a layup. Therefore, he looked for a kick-out pass, only to turn the ball over. And if you thought this was gut-wrenching, it only gets worse. Dwyane Wade would miss a step-back jumper, and with 14 seconds remaining, Kawhi would grab the rebound, and Coach Pop opted to not call timeout, trusting Ginobili to attack the Miami Heat defense. But once again, Manu would crucially turn the ball over. Miami had done the impossible, tying the series at 3 games each, forcing a deciding Game 7. Ginobili was devastated.
And I was not there. I mean, something in me was not responding the same way. So either one good game, terrible game, okay game, terrible game, and I play a very good 5th game, and we get to Game 6 to win it, and may have played the worst game of my career. I don't know.
Miami would continue their incredible success in Game 7 and would do something the Spurs had never been able to achieve, winning back-to-back NBA championships. Manu placed the full blame of the Spurs' final loss on himself.
To this day, believe that I lost that game and we didn't win a championship because of me.
Heading into the 2013-2014 season, Coach Pop would force the Spurs to watch Game 6 from start to finish, making every player relive all of the emotions of their tragic downfall, aiming to motivate them to get revenge in what would likely be their final championship run as a team. Motivated by his terrible performance in last year's finals, Manu would average 12.3 points during the regular season, and his incredible play at 36 years old would have him finish 3rd in 6th Man of the Year voting. Not only would Ginobili have an incredible season, San Antonio finished with 62 wins, and they would claw their way back to the NBA Finals. This stage was set: San Antonio against Miami in the 2013-2014 NBA Finals. Before the series began, Manu contemplated their chances.
We know we're facing a very talented and tough team, and it's going to be rough, but of course we believe in our means, and we're going to do our best as always.
San Antonio would play what many have called the most beautiful basketball ever throughout the 2014 finals. Not a single player was above another. They would move the ball with precision, finding whoever was open, whether it was Manu Ginobili, Danny Green, or Patty Mills. This precision allowed the Spurs to surgically dissect Miami's defense, grabbing a 3-1 lead heading into a potentially championship-deciding Game 5. Yet the Heat weren't done, facing a challenge that had never been achieved in NBA history before. Coming back from being down 3-1 in a final series, LeBron and the Heat grabbed an early 22-6 lead in the first quarter. However, the Spurs would fight their way back, executing every possession with perfection. And then in the second quarter, Manu would blow everyone's minds. After a rebound, he received the ball and attacked the rim hard in transition.
The Heat have gone cold. Ginobili on the finish.
That dunk was kind of symbolic for me too, right? I had a lot of anger and disappointment from the year before, from my struggles, and it was very momentum changing.
Manu and the Spurs kept their foot firmly pressed on the Heat's neck for the remainder of Game 5, winning by 17 points and claiming what would be their 5th NBA championship of the Tim Duncan era, Ginobili's 4th. Manu would reflect after the game, sharing,
The moment where we got that lead and says, well, this is ours, and with the same group, it was so satisfying, and I felt like something was still stuck in my leg from last year, and I felt like, I healed.
Ginobili would finish his career in San Antonio 4 years later as a EuroLeague champion, 4-time NBA champion, and Olympic gold medalist. The 57th draft pick, a player who was chosen because the Spurs had to pick someone, had blossomed into one of the greatest international players of all time. And the crazy thing is, he did it only using his left hand. But you know what's even more shocking? Dominating the NBA at 5'3", which is exactly what Muggsy Bogues did. Find out more by watching this video next.